These negotiations are going on. Other things are happening. There are a lot of changes coming here in Washington in the new year. Democrats, of course, take over the House of Representatives, and at least two of President Trump's cabinet secretaries are riding off into the sunset. Tonight, Interior Secretary Zinke talks about why he's leaving and the controversies that have dogged him really since day one. You started your first day in office riding in on a horse named Tonto in jeans and a black cowboy hat. People knew this was going to be a different Secretary of the Interior. Why are you leaving?
I think at the end of the day, what's important? What's important is Interior's mission. And I love Interior and I love our public lands. But there comes a time when it's about Zinke and not the Interior. And the distractions outweigh the accomplishments. And so looking at it, it's time to dismount. I enjoyed my time. I had a great ride. In a rodeo analogy, great ride, 8 seconds, great score. I got off the horse. And there are talented people that can continue the mission. I don't think the mission's going to change. The direction that we led Interior is the right direction.
Were you forced out?
No, the president, I think, was sad but understood I was leaving. I do have the president's full support. I exercised what the president wanted.
January 22nd. Usually there's a tension between the department's mandates to protect the nation's natural resources and to manage them for commercial use. Under Zinke, the only question from the redwood forest to the Gulf Stream waters is how fast these resources can be auctioned off.
Bulk. And let me tell you what they don't say is that we've opened up millions of acres for public access, hunting and fishing. We've opened up 39 wildlife refuges. We've expanded wilderness. We've initiated wildlife corridors, first ever. I've withdrawn minerals in sensitive areas from oil and gas leases. What they don't say is actually we are one of the leading conservationists. No one loves public land more than I do. But you can't not manage our public lands. And those that want to wrap it up in bubble wrap are fully content with watching our forests burn down. The level of destruction that has occurred by not managing our assets, particularly our forests, unprecedented. All they got to do is maybe New York ought to go out and take a look at Paradise, California, and look at the level of destruction mismanagement causes.
And you're convinced that that's the reason?
That's certainly one of it. One of the reasons, it's drought. Temperatures are rising, the season's getting longer, but it does not relieve you the responsibility to manage. That's removing the dead and dying timber, and the president's right. It is a management issue as much as anything else.
Your critics say that you turned a blind eye to science when it came to climate change, and that you really specifically tried to clamp down in this department on that issue, and then this big report comes out. Tell me your assessment of that report.
Well, I wish they would actually read the 1,700-page report, because the report itself is pretty good. It talks about 200 models. There's over 1,000 variables. I think if there's a flaw in the report, it's the summary focused on the catastrophe. The report looked at a full range of options. The media only focused on worst case every time. And yes, we should look at energy being efficient. In the U.S., by the way, we're reducing our carbon footprint. Our CO2 is down, our methane's down, overall emissions is down in this country.
As compared to?
Europe's up, China is way up, India's up, Russia's up, everyone else is up. We're going down while we have our record-breaking oil and gas production.
Seeing all the data, you believe in man-caused climate change.
And there's no doubt in my mind that the climate is changing. It's always changed, but it's changing in ways that we don't understand.
You mentioned the investigations. There are a lot of them.
There's allegations. I got investigated on my socks.
Make America Great Again socks.
My wife being in the same car. What do you want to do? You wanted to run outside the car? Whitefish Energy. The only thing I have in common with Whitefish Energy is I'm from Whitefish, Montana, and I graduated from Whitefish High School. So they make the allegations. With great fanfare, they announce them. Hits the media, nice clickbait. 6 months later, every investigation, 10 so far completed, always has the same conclusion. I follow all rules, regulations, law, no wrongdoing. That doesn't get reported.
The other thing, the casino lobbying allegation that you made a decision against a Bureau of Indian Affairs recommendation on 2 casino operations because they charged that you talked to MGM Resorts.
The court agreed with my decision. And the decision was this: should Interior have a say in jurisdiction on non-tribal lands that are held in the federal state? No. If it's a tribal land held in the federal state, I should have a say. If it's not, the tribes are sovereign, they're free to do what they want, but no state legislature should dictate terms to the federal government, yes or no. So the decision was upheld in court. It was the right decision.
National Park Service report deleted all mention of human-caused climate change at your direction?
Absolutely, patently false. That report never even came up to Washington, D.C. We read it at the same time that you did. So looking at it, it was careers that took some of it out, but it wasn't anything from the Washington, D.C. office, nor any political appointee had any view of it.
Office of Special Counsel looking into whether Joel Clement, former Interior Department official, was reassigned in retaliation for criticism of you.
No, but the audacity of any public employee to say that they're not held accountable. These people that are angry, and I'm not angry. I was never angry when President Obama was the president. I disagreed with his policies, but I was respectful. I was never angry, and I didn't hate President Obama.
Bears Ear National Monument. Critics said that you were taking away these public lands.
So what the president did, and he did the right decision, he listened to Utah. He revised the boundaries, restored 800,000 acres of wilderness back to wilderness, restored a national forest back to national forest.
You wanted to have this plan to open up almost all U.S. coastal waters to offshore oil and gas drilling. There eventually was an exemption for Florida. And some people said, well, that was a political exemption to help Rick Scott.
Here's what occurred. Is the previous administration took about 95% of our coastline off the table for oil and gas. We did zero-based. We looked at it and said, let's open it up and let's talk to the coastal communities, the governors, and then make it right. With Florida, there's a military moratorium in law against oil and gas drilling. And if there's one thing the president has done with Interior is we've given back the local community voice, the state's voice, in wildlife management, in lands management, in our parks, our recreation opportunities, and oil and gas too.
I've heard conservatives say that they think that environmentalists, especially very active ones, were leading the charge against Scott Pruitt and against you. With Scott Pruitt, there was some fire behind the smoke on some of these allegations. With you, you're saying there's nothing to it, but do you believe it's an orchestrated effort because of the environmental lobby?
There is no doubt that it's coordinated. There isn't anything there. There never has been. But I have to say up front, I did wear MAGA socks. So I'm guilty of wearing the socks. So yes, I wore the socks with the president's face on it. So guilty as charged.
Drain the swamp.
The president campaigned on draining the swamp. His critics will say that the swamp got the better of him, and some people in his administration became the swamp. How do you respond to that?
I think when you start draining the swamp, it exposes the serpents, and they don't like it. The president's done a magnificent job beginning to drain the swamp, but this is a battle. That's a battle for America's future. Is the swamp and the power in D.C. is corruptive. Well, after 30 years of service, 23 years in the SEALs, a commander of SEAL Team 6, a state senator, a U.S. congressman, and a secretary, I've never seen the level of anger, of hatred. They have threatened my wife, my family, trespassed on our property, put signs around the neighborhood. They have lied, cheated, and make false allegations. This country needs to take a deep breath and understand we're all Americans. This is, I think, the best view in Washington, D.C. It extends from the Capitol all the way to Arlington National Cemetery. Now, most people see the majesty of the monuments. As Secretary, what I see is about $800 million of backlog and repair. We're prioritizing the backlog of our infrastructure. Our parks are not Republican or Democrat. They're American. They're red, white, and blue.
You gonna miss this?
I am. But I'm going to see it from kind of like getting off a horse. I'm going to see it from a different perspective. And sometimes looking at Washington from Montana, that's not a bad view at all.